Well, Emma, at the moment, the government have actually called for an emergency security cabinet meeting. I'm currently standing outside the Israel Defense Force headquarters as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just drove into this building just over an hour ago to hold this emergency meeting to know where they are going to go next for Operations Guardians of the Wall, because earlier today, the Hamas force, which runs the Gaza Strip, threatened to hit new targets within Israel, ones that haven't been hit before. Now, these threats from Hamas, as we have seen over the last few days, are not empty threats. So this is something that they are taking extremely seriously. Now, they have threatened to hit these targets at 6 p.m. tonight, which is in exactly 20 minutes from now. So this emergency cabinet meeting is currently underway, and Hamas have just announced that these targets that they are going to be hitting is the city of Haifa up in the north of the country and Eilat down in the south. Now, these are cities that they don't normally strike. Normally, they go for the cities in the Gaza periphery and Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, which are the two biggest cities in the country. So this is something that is obviously of prime importance and they are focusing on at the moment. But this is obviously something extremely unprecedented and something that we are obviously keeping our eye on. And the country is obviously under high alert as we brace ourselves for the next 20 minutes as Hamas make those threats to hit these targets here in Israel. Emma?
Yeah, definitely an intense situation. Yesterday, we talked about people seeking shelter in their own bomb shelters and safe areas as well. Has that continued on? I mean, I see traffic behind you, but are people sort of taking shelter at this point?
Well, at the moment, no. Because in the centre of Tel Aviv, people are sort of returning to normal, because this is a situation that people are rather used to. I mean, out on the streets, things are rather quiet than they normally would. But even throughout the night last night, these rockets were going off. I mean, at 9 p.m. last night, the rocket fire began and then even continued at 3 a.m. here. So this is something that people are used to, but has continued. But throughout the day, people knew that this is something that tends to go on at night time only, especially because it is Ramadan, and after people have broken their fast is normally when these barrages of rockets continue. So things went back to normal throughout the day, but these shelters are open and have remained open throughout the day and will continue to be open for time to come. But throughout the day, it is remained normal, but when it hits nighttime, things will certainly clear out and people will be staying indoors, Emma.
All right, Sarah Williamson live in Tel Aviv. Sarah, thank you.
All right, meantime, the Biden administration and President Trump both issuing statements about the escalating tensions there in the Mideast. For a look at that,
we want to bring in our panelist, John Fleming, former Republican congressman from Louisiana and a former assistant to President Trump. Also, Andrea Kaye, GOP strategist and host of The Andrea Kaye Show, and Peter King, former Republican congressman from New York. Thank you, panelists, for being here. A lot going on, of course, overseas. However, Donald Trump weighing in here in the U.S., saying this: when I was in office, we were known as the peace presidency because Israel's adversaries knew that the U.S. stood strongly with Israel. Under Biden, the world is getting more violent and more unstable because his weakness. Palestinians must end the violence, terror, and rocket attacks. If you don't mind, we can compare that to the State Department that we've seen under President Biden, under Secretary Blinken. His conversation with Israel's foreign minister saying in part, quote, the secretary reiterated his call on all parties to de-escalate tensions. The secretary emphasized the need for Israelis and Palestinians to be able to live in safety and security. We'll start, Peter King, with you. Your thoughts. I just wanted to get both out there so our viewers at home can sort of see how Donald Trump responded, how the Biden administration responded. Peter, how are you viewing these responses?
Well, nothing demonstrates the difference between the Biden and Trump foreign policies in the Middle East. President Biden has been going out of his way to try to make an agreement with Iran. He cold shoulders Netanyahu, his strongest ally in the Middle East, and he's really undoing so much of what President Trump had achieved. President Trump achieved more in the Middle East than any president really since the creation of Israel. The Abraham Accords, having these solid Arab countries allying themselves with Israel, the coming away from the Iran agreement, which was such a sellout that the Biden administration was responsible for. And what he's doing is he's really sending a message of uncertainty. And Iran and Hamas are going to take advantage of that. Hamas is being funded by Iran. That's what this is about. I was in Israel, actually in Ashkelon, in 2014, in that last war over there. And this is funded by Iran. It's been carried out by Hamas. And they would never, ever have attempted this under President Trump.
Yeah, John Fleming, your thoughts on that? Again, two totally separate statements there, and it seems as if any political leader right now is choosing a side, right? Jumping on the being allies with Israel, defending the Palestinians. I mean, you've seen already protests in New York City and D.C. over it. Your thoughts on this, and just, again, the stark contrast between the messaging of a former administration and the current one?
Well, this is clearly a test for the Biden administration. They're going to push them, particularly Iran and all of those actors who Iran backs, in this case, Hamas. They're sending many missiles, upgraded missiles. I've seen up close the Iron Dome. It's a wonderful system, and it's protecting, of course, the people in Israel, and that's a very good thing. But this is a test, and we're going to see more of this as Biden is sort of soft-selling his ideas of some sort of an agreement with Iran, which was a big mistake to begin with. We saw the best peace, the most peace in the Middle East under President Trump, even the Abraham Accords, bringing in 4 Arabic countries into the fold to normalize relations with Israel. They knew to realign themselves with the U.S. and with Israel and against Iran for their own protection. And now we're seeing this being unwound by the Biden administration, and we're going to see more violence, unfortunately.
You know, Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn weighing in on Twitter to this rising tension, saying the conflict in Israel would not be happening if President Trump were in office. And of course, what's playing out right now is not happening in the United States. It's happening abroad. It's in the Middle East. But Andrea, you know, your thoughts on the senator's statement there and maybe why it's happening right now?
Well, she's absolutely correct that it wouldn't be happening under a Trump presidency. How do we know that? Because it didn't, right? And Trump just left office about like 5 minutes ago. And there was a couple of reasons why this didn't happen when Trump was in office. First of all, Trump did what many other presidents had promised in the past. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. What a statement that made to the region and to the world about the United States and how much they stood with our greatest ally, Israel, and their right to exist, which is what the underpinnings of this is. And then I'm glad Peter King brought up Iran, because they're the third leg of the stool over there as the #1 state sponsor of terrorists and the funder of Hamas. And Iran has vowed for many years to wipe Israel and the United States off the map. And so what did Trump do? He took out the #1 terror dude of Iran, wiped him off the map, Soleimani. And so when you do that, it's not just enough to have your enemies know that you have force. You have to show that you're willing to use it. And Trump did, and he did it strategically.
Peter King, I want to get you back in, and I don't want to throw you in the weeds on this, but I think you can answer this. There is a lot of speculation that the militant group Hamas is actually being used by Iran to take advantage of the political discourse, of the violence, if you will, in this area, the conflict between Palestinians and Israelis here. Is there truth in that?
I think all the evidence leads toward that. There's no doubt Iran sees this now. There's an unsettling in the Middle East since President Biden came in. Even the fact that, to me, the worst thing he's doing is Biden is showing a moral equivalence between Israel and Palestinians, and that is absolutely wrong. So yes, Iran is definitely trying to take advantage of this political vacuum, and they're using Hamas to do it. Hamas is using Iranian rockets. They're being supported by Iran, and Iran is using the money that it got from the Biden administration to carry that out.
All right. Appreciate the political talk and, of course, foreign policy analysis. John Fleming, Andrea Kaye, Peter King, if you don't mind sticking around, we've got another topic we want to get to coming up.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.